Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel, to the round table, for something of a Halloween special, really, and also a bit of a season 13 themed round table. Obviously, there's no new Doctor Who TV on TV at the moment, but we thought we'd kind of dip into the archives and talk about some old stuff. And with the release of the box set for season 13, with it being Halloween, with the recent BFI screening for the first story from that season, Terror of the Zygons, and with the Zygons just being kind of quite Halloweeny monsters as well, big orange creatures covered in suckers, we thought we'd do a bit of a Zygon special, kind of talking about Terror of the Zygons and then kind of pivoting onto the later stuff, both on screen, in the expanded media. People more knowledgeable than me can fill in on those points, I'm talking to Josh and maybe Mars as well. And
yeah, you don't get me to talk about the Zygon when being you just isn't enough, then we're all good.
Yeah, no knowledge of that whatsoever. I've no idea.
Has nobody seen that one?
I think I switched it off after about 60 seconds.
Is that a review on the back of the DVD? Yeah.
I should say that obviously I'm joined by Miles, Josh, and Charlie, our Classic Who / Scottish correspondents, for a bit of perspective there.
Perfect dovetail for Zygons. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have a Scotsman here.
Charlie, why don't we give you the first word about this story and what it was like 50 years ago to watch it for the first time? And
yeah, I remember clearly watching it, and I think the only Scottish reference we'd had already in Doctor Who was Jamie, and I couldn't remember. I was too young for that. Even I was too young for that, and I knew of Jamie, and I knew there'd been Scottish stories or stories set or referencing Scotland. So I was really excited when this one came round. And one thing that I remember clearly is I had no sense that it wasn't filmed in Scotland. I just, because of the age I was, I just thought, yeah, they went to Scotland and they filmed it there. I didn't think for a second that they hadn't done that. And I also remember thinking that I really like the use Scottish actors. There's very few really bad accents in it. They're all pretty. And Angus Lennie, who played the publican, was well known anyway. He was in a soap opera called Crossroads at the time, and he was a bit of a name to be in Doctor Who at the time. He was a bit of a proper guest star. So people like that, and other actors were actors who popped up in shows for Scottish television, like dramas that Scottish TV had made. So there were faces there that I knew. I liked that they used proper Scottish people and didn't have English actors doing duff Scottish accents. And yeah, it was exciting. I remember being genuinely excited by it, and luckily it turning out to be a pretty good story. So that was it's a pretty good memory. I think it was around then where God, I'm really going to feel old now. This is around then when we got our first colour television. And I actually hadn't seen much Doctor Who in colour before this kind of era. And but I was really into it. So it's obviously with the Zygons and the inside the ship is very colourful and vibrant. And so I get drawn into that world. So it was, really exciting at the time. I remember this little Scottish boy being genuinely excited that my favourite TV show had come to Scotland.
It's beautiful. The location filming in it is so lovely, and the way, I mean, it's Dougie Camfield, isn't it, who directed it? It's like those shots of the Doctor running around the moors, and they're like these low angles. It's Tom jumping over, it really, honestly, if you had told me that was the Scottish Highlands, I would have absolutely believed you. It looks gorgeous.
There's the moment where the Doctor's being chased by the Scarrison, and he's rolling around in the bracken and stuff like that. He actually must have gone to great lengths to find stuff that looked quite Scottish, because the stuff that he's rolling around in does look like the stuff you'd find in the Highlands of Scotland. So I think they've clearly done their research and done a bit of hard work to get it. And also what I quite like watching it recently, the BFI, was they didn't do any really crap matte shots, which was good. I'm glad they just avoided that and just did good location work and just well directed, as you say, Miles. It was well directed piece of television, and worked really well, And of course, I loved the Doctor wearing the tartan thing and all that. That was great. It was fantastic. And in a broader sense, it is a shame that, given the show has gone abroad several times, that they have set stories in Scotland over the years and they've not once gone to Scotland, which is a a bit of a shame, and particularly in more recent times when they had the story Tooth and Claw, that they didn't just go. If you're going to do it, just do it. You've got a bit more of a budget now. But yeah, it's a shame they've never once done that. But maybe one day, who knows?
Yeah, it's still waiting to be ticked off, isn't it? Like I've got a map on Google Earth of all the locations, or most of the locations where they filmed, and I think the furthest north point is like Liverpool now because of floods. But there's still like this massive kind of blank spot where like West Island is just like waiting to be filled one day with some pinpoints and stuff. One day.
There's got so many great castles, and even Edinburgh, which isn't that far away, is a wonderful location. And although Edinburgh is notoriously a really tricky location to film in because it's just not very. The old town has got cobbled streets and stuff like that, and it's very old. So to move equipment around and sort of lug it around will be quite tricky from a location point of view, and also getting permission to film in Edinburgh is quite tricky as well. But just get yourself up there and go to a castle or something. It'd be great,
Maybe to Miles. I mean, what was your first exposure either to this story or the Zygons in general, and Josh a bit as well? I wonder who kind of came to them next, because obviously Charlie, was first.
I was thinking about this today actually. I think my awareness, because my cousin was a big fan of Classic Who growing up, so he kind of introduced me. So I would have seen Zygons in like that Monsters and Villains book and things like that growing up. But I've just remembered today there was a Battles in Time magazine, when they did the Ultimate Monsters. And for some reason, I got that issue of Battles in Time. I hadn't got any for ages. On the cover, and then I got this one with the Zygon on the front cover of It says a Broton, there's the Warlord, or something, or that big text on the front like that. So that I was aware of them. I knew I was always intrigued by them. I remember the figure coming out with the first classic figures as well. But I don't think I actually saw Terror of the Zygons until it came out on DVD. And it was one of the last ones to come out on DVD as well. It took a long time for them to get around to it. But I absolutely, I fell in love with it. I really... When you're at that age and you're making lists and you always kind of have a top 10 episodes, Zygons shot to like number 2 or 3 straight away. Like I really latched onto it and loved it. You had Tom, Sarah, Harry, and Unit. It was all the kind of the elements that you love as a kid. And the Zygons, which I guess around that time we would have had Day of the Doctor as well. So we were kind of quite Zygon mad around then. But I don't know what about you, Josh?
Very similar. I mean, I remember getting the Battles in Time card from the Ultimate Monsters. I remember getting the figure of it as well from Toys R Us. I think it was on my birthday. I think I used my birthday money. And it stands out as a design, isn't it? And it's very intriguing. So I was aware of them having not seen the story, and before Day of the Doctor, I think definitely.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen Terror of the Zygons either until an hour ago. So, and what was very interesting having watched it today is it feels so different actually to other Tom Baker stories that I've seen. I rewatched Genesis of the Daleks a week or so ago, and it's very sort of, it's closer to that, but it feels with Unit, it feels more like a Pertwee story, especially with all the things, like oil rigs being destroyed and all of those themes. It feels like a Pertwee story. And other than the cliffhanger to part 1 with Sarah Jane on the phone and then the Zygon appearing,
great cliffhanger.
Great cliffhanger. I hadn't seen any of the clips from it either. So it was real fun to watch, and thank you for doing this because I probably wouldn't have got round to it.
Perfect.
That's another one to check off the list for me.
Well, I was going to say as well. I mean, I was similar to our younger people on this panel as well, in that I think my first exposure to the Zygons was the figure. Not necessarily having it at the time, I know, but just kind of seeing it and seeing that striking design and stuff in the books as well and things.
Has it got the Scarrison recall unit as well?
I was going to say, now I know what that is.
And so I think it is based on Broton from memory, and he's got the little the microphone as well, which they included for the actor.
That's a
little silver
brilliant
dot.
bit of detail, isn't
But
it?
it's a it's
You
a
should do a
great,
book on them,
great
Richard.
figure. Yeah, I'll make note. Great figure and a great design, and yeah, I mean, I suppose we'll get onto it later, kind of the comparing the classic to the new and the different designs and which is the most successful, perhaps. But certainly, it's one of those where I was kind of aware of it beforehand, and it was already in the mind before Day of the Doctor or anything. That they returned later on.
What stuck out to me, having watched it now, is that Brosol is that image of a classic Zygon that I have in my head, and watching it, I realized that actually they don't all look the same. Some of them have got
Yes,
different
yeah.
shaping heads and
That's the
things like
thing about
that.
the classic ones in particular, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd never.
Like
I
different
never
shaped
knew that they look like
heads
that
and
because
things.
in the new
Yeah.
series they all look pretty
They're much
standardized
more
and
uniform.
the same.
Yeah, that's one of the things that was a feeling of not just Doctor Who, but of sci-fi in general at the time. That all monsters, all aliens looked the same because they all had the same prosthesis or the same design, and they actually gave the Zygons a personality. They gave them individuality, and and I think they did the same slightly with the Kralls as well in Android Invasion, which I rewatched recently, and that was good. I like that, and I think watching it recently in the BFI. I've always been struck by how good the prosthesis were, but I was really struck by how well they looked on screen, which makes it all the more remarkable that they built these wonderful costumes and they never used them again. It's like
Yeah,
you had
yeah.
this monster that was popular in a good story and a prosthesis that really worked, and then we'll just leave that.
It's
It's odd.
crazy.
No.
It's such a distinctive silhouette as well. Because like particularly like sort of even side on, like I remember there was that trailer, I think it might have been for the 40th anniversary, the one with Orbital, the sort of that really sort of techno Doctor Who theme. And I remember there being a shot of a Zygon strangling a unit troop or stinging a unit troop. And it's a great shot. But it's that kind of side-on thing of it with the sort of that bulbous head. It's so instantly recognizable, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. They don't even like not once did they come back, and yet they were still one of those monsters that everyone could name. Up there with the big hitters, really.
Yeah, they were all they always seemed to be considered iconic, and yet they only had one story, and yet they were among Doctor Who fans certainly they were considered up there. So
Yeah.
I think there was always this feeling that it was inevitable that they would come back. There was so many good prosthesis at the time. The Sontarans were fantastic, and in Time Warrior and in Sontaran Experiment, but for some bizarre reason, I don't know how this happened. They seem to then regress because the Sontarans and the two Doctors are awful. They're absolutely shocking. How did they get worse at something? They got really good in 1974 and then really bad at it in the mid 80s. But yeah, so it was always a surprise that they never brought the Zygons back, and I really am because I thought they were a great monster and a great concept of who they were as well.
Yeah, it's that can even from the off. They're not the typical alien monster race. They're refugees, which is such an interesting idea for a monster in Doctor Who to have that extra level to them. It's not a big invasion fleet. It's a fleet of refugee ships looking for a new home. It's not black and white. It's really and obviously they pick up on that for what Peter Harness later does in the new series. Really a really clever idea.
Yeah. And the shape-shifting thing is always interesting. And, it obviously cuts down on the amount of time you have to do the prosthetics work and all that. But, it's an interesting idea. And although they kind of did it again with Android Invasion, it was a bit of labour at that point that season. It's they're good monsters, definitely. And I was delighted when they came back in Day of the Doctor properly. That was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember them when they came back in Day of the Doctor, with all the shape-shifting thing, because there's the moment in Day of the Doctor when it turns out that Kate, or who we thought was Kate, is actually a Zygon. And there's this really... It's kind of a visceral horror transformation that because obviously in the
her mouth, isn't it? And it's all
in the previous ones it was sort of more a light and then they sort of bubble up, whereas there's literally a bile that comes out of the mouth, her sort of suckers come out of the face, and as a sort of teenager who was starting to sort of be less scared of Doctor Who, that was a really
the
horrific
same,
visual.
actually, yeah.
I remember that being like,
those moments that
that's
they're
a
actually going
bit.
to cut through, and yeah.
Yeah, it's the sort of and they kind of use that in the later Capaldi episode with the kind of that Zygon who's sort of mid transformation. He's sort of got bulging
Oh
skin
yes,
and
with the
sort of
stuff on his
bloating
face.
and
Yes.
yeah. So it's a really horrific kind of idea that shape shifting thing, or at least what they do with it for the Zygons. I thought they were great in Day of the Doctor.
I think the thing is with the Zygons, there's something kind of gross about them in a way.
Yeah.
So when that comes to mind is just like the word squelchy, even like the way that they operate the sort of main control panel by like
It's with like it's that shot of Broton like grabbing the sort of the suckers on the
Yeah.
thing, and you can see them sort of squidge and move. It's
Yeah,
it's a great spaceship design.
yeah.
It is.
And I know that sort of in the new series, like with the TARDIS, it's sort of like we're gonna make it all
More organic.
But this is like proper, like organic alien tech.
Yeah.
It feels kind of gives you the shivers just sort of
Yeah.
looking at it, which I think is why it has that visceral response from people. Something that I did notice as well watching Terror of the Zygons today, though, is something that I think that they must have changed in the new series that I think was probably better, is that when they take on the form of someone else, they also get the memories of that person, which I think was a very clever addition, so that they also are able to pretend that they are this person a lot better. Because you did find, well, I found in Terror of the Zygons, as much as they look like these people, you can kind of tell something's up with them. Like they're not acting the way that they should do. So that addition to the lore and to how they work, and that they have their memories and they can act as a perfect copy of them as well, just adds to that unsettling nature of like, you know, who can you trust? Could anyone be a Zygon? Because they kind of had a tell in this original story, whereas in the new series you really couldn't tell.
That's the kind of
That's a good point, yeah.
that was the same in Android Invasion. You've got this wonderful thing where you can copy someone exactly physically. And it's a case of, right, we've made an exact copy of you. Now go off and act all creepy and different and clearly not that person at all. You know, and you can be spotted in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a flaw.
Yeah, especially since they've been watching the Doctor and Sarah and Harry this whole time. And then they copy Harry and Harry walks in completely just acting just like moody. Like, oh, I'm just
But then
this.
But then you also get
the
but then you also get the creepiness of like the nurse and the groundskeeper and like and they're really like there's something eerie about them, and they're not even in a monster costume. They're just behaving in this really sort of uncanny kind of.
And what's a nice touch is we get to see the real nurse at the end, and it's a lovely piece of acting because she's a totally different character for that reason, and and it's nice to see that she is a lovely, caring nurse and a nice human being, you know. She plays the evil nurse really well.
Yeah, and it's the same with the caretaker character as well, who's this who again it's a really nice moment when they all escape the ship, and it's like, oh, these are the really nice versions of these people. We've had the creepy ones, so it kind of. It works for that because it really does lean into the kind of horror aspects in Zygons. Certainly like the stuff on film in the forest, like that's something like out of a Hammer film almost, with the Zygon running around the woods and unit troops shooting left, right and centre and injuring nurses and things like that.
And of course the other really clever thing was tapping into they often did in sci-fi, and Doctor Who's done it before, was tapping into mythology and that whole idea of the Loch Ness Monster is really clever to take that on, and so even so much so that they felt, I don't know if that was the reason, but the target book was called Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster. So they clearly thought that was a more sellable than calling it Terror of the Zygons. That clearly was more maybe a marketing strategy. I don't know, but to give sort of scientific background to something that's a myth or a legend is really smart. I like that. It's good science fiction.
Yeah. I love the Scarazon. I mean, obviously, like it's aged somewhat. What was the there's been the revamped version. Was that the one they showed at the BFI?
Yeah, we saw that at the BFI. I mean, we saw actually both puppets as well. They brought them up on the stage. The was it the original first or the other way around? But we saw the original and the recreated version. They're both about the same size. I mean, a big thing had been kind of made about that beforehand. Actually, as far as I can remember and as far as I could see, it's only about 3 shots I think they've changed in part 4. There we go.
Oh,
perfect. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
It was there for photo opportunities and everything.
That's great.
It's a great. To be fair, it's a great puppet, and they've restored the original one as well.
That was the original one on the there. That's the original
on the
right.
It's a little bit taller.
Like it's a younger brother. One. Yeah.
Yes. Me and my child.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, it was nice to see. I think probably nicer actually to see those in person. That was kind of more of an event, more of a thing than the actual thing. It's quite fleeting in the actual part 4, because I think it's only part 4 they changed, not any of the earlier stuff. But yeah, they're basically going to correct some of the perspective stuff where, like, I don't know, like the bottom of it was overlapping over like the footpath rather than like the gap between the footpath and the River Thames kind of thing. Just little things like that.
Sure.
And the perspective of it, like trying to eat Tom Baker and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't one of the most noticeable one. You kind of wonder slightly why they did it or why they chose to do that. But
yeah, I don't want to be rude, but I did wonder why they bothered, because I didn't really notice.
I was
and maybe
expecting
now that I've got the box set, I'll watch it again, and I know what I'm looking for. But I was expecting what we've had with the touched up effects in recent box sets. It was nowhere near the kind of standard they've had so far. And if you're not going to do it like that, just don't bother. We're happy to accept it.
It's a funny moment though, isn't it? At the end when they go to, because it's like the whole story's been set in Scotland, and then they're suddenly like, should we go to London for the big finale? It's like, no, just let's stay here.
In Scotland,
we've established, we've established. Why not have it at Loch Ness? That's the big
all roads lead to London
finale moment. Yeah, always exactly. So that's always been like part of, I suppose, one of the stories sort of short. Yeah.
That's tapping into something that was really, that I look back on again, which I noticed more when I became a teenager. But you watch TV back in the 70s. Everyone spoke with RP. You very rarely heard a regional accent. That's why Coronation Street was so important, and the likes of that was really significant. And everything was London centric. Everything just drew right back into London again. So it was lovely to have it set in Scotland. But you're right, quite disappointing that they decided, let's go back to London again, because that's where the really important stuff happens. Nothing important happens outside London. So if there's going to be a big thing, it's going to be in London. So you're absolutely right. And that was the reality of TV. It's particularly, dare I say, the BBC in the 70s was very London centric, and that's why it was so significant for someone like me to hear Scottish accents on a mainstream family TV show.
But it obviously did well as a story, because it's like we say, it created such a big legacy. And I remember David Tennant always, whenever he was interviewed about the new series, he'd always be like, I'd love to bring the Zygons back. Like they'd always talk about the Zygons as if they were this big sort of big monster from the past. So I think there was always that kind of awareness. In fact, I think, didn't they do a novel around the Tennant era?
Yeah, like I was going to say, because ultimately, I suppose part of the reason why they come back in Day of the Doctor, it's like it's an anniversary thing. It's also like a gift to Tennant, isn't it? Like saying, if you come back, we'll give you a Zygon story or some Zygon action. But yeah, there was, I think Steve Coleman, it was Sting of the Zygons, and I think it was the first of those new series novels where they'd both featured and had on the cover an existing classic series monster.
And there was the Paul McGann audios, which had some Zygon stories in as well, which I remember enjoying. The Zygon Who Fell to Earth. I think Paul Mars did that one. And there was Death in Blackpool as well, which it features, I think it's either a Zygon or, for some reason I've got in my head, there was a thing called a Zynog, which was like a Zygon who's been forced to stay in their shape-shifted state, basically, as like a punishment. But it was a very interesting, that Death in Blackpool's a very intense story. It's a Christmas special, and it's like an EastEnders Christmas special, because everyone ends in a traumatic situation. But the Zygons are at the heart of it, which is quite interesting.
I just remembered another moment the Zygons appeared which was significant to how they were seen back in the time, that they are one of the monsters they're in the little montage at Tom Baker's regeneration when he's hanging from
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
yeah, they are,
Proton.
one of the
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so they
so
haven't
of all
been
those
back on
years,
screen
they
technically
saw fit to
since
see the Zygons
the
as
original
someone that need to be
story.
represented in that little moment.
And the pirate captain as well, from the pirate
Yeah,
planet,
yeah.
of course.
Yes. And am I right in saying as well, I think I recognize that the clip of Sarah Jane from that montage as well is from Terror of the Zygons when she says,
It is, yes, yeah.
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 Okay.
I thought I recognized
It's the
that.
one of Harry from. Oh no, I think that's from a different story.
I've actually dug something up to show you. So a piece of stuff from the 70s is this pack of Doctor Who Trump cards.
Oh,
Oh,
incredible.
And
vintage.
they're pretty rubbish. That's the Doctor, for example, right? So the Doctor's special ability is 10, his special powers 9, and his weapons 6. So they've got
his
they
bright green
actually have
trousers.
Zygons. They've got the Zygons there.
Yay.
Their special ability is 5.
Mental
Mental powers
ability.
5. Yeah, mental powers. Surely they're better than 5.
Surely they've got
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
strong mental
Shape
powers
and-
to be able
Yeah,
to hold
they're
the
literally-
For God's sake.
Yeah.
And it says there, for centuries the Zygons have waited beneath the dark waters of Loch Ness with the Scarison, a fearsome beast brought to Earth from their home planet. Let Earth beware of the Zygons.
Wow.
That's so cool.
The bizarre
love that.
thing about this set is that they've got Cybermen, obviously, and they've got Davros and
Yeah.
got some Barons. They don't have Daleks. The Daleks aren't in it.
Do you think there was like a
Wow.
Terry Nation dispute or
Right,
something?
maybe.
Stopped them
I don't know,
That's
but
very
Davros is
strange.
there. But I mean, they've got Wyatt Earp for crying out loud. You know?
God.
If they've got someone from the Gunfighters and they couldn't even get a
Gunfighters.
Dalek in it.
The Ogrons and the Sea Devil, haven't they got the names mixed up?
That's right.
Or is that,
Yes,
am I?
that's it.
That's
there you
it
go.
there.
Oh,
And
for goodness
there,
sake.
well done, good knowledge. I
And
didn't
the,
know
og-
that.
and the Ogrons have a better mental ability than the Zygons. There you go. Who
surely
did
that
these
should be the
cards?
lowest.
Exactly. These cards, honestly.
Yeah.
I need to get myself a pack.
Not canon. Or maybe this is the only thing that's canon. So we should take this.
That's
pure-
the Bible of Doctor Who. Yeah.
I don't think
This is
so.
the new Bible.
I was going to say actually, that's quite a nice description that you just read there, Charlie. I think it kind of it kind of takes us quite nicely into the new series, maybe where we do get the more sympathetic portrayal of the Zygons, perhaps. It'd be interesting to kind of talk about that in relation to the originals, because yeah, there's definitely a shift there, I think, as well as the costume thing, which often comes up about how the costumes are more uniform and not as, I don't know, they don't feel quite as authentic or realistic or as tactile perhaps as the original ones with all their suckers and everything, and the lack of uniformity and the more alien look of them. But yeah, that angle as well, how the Zygons kind of pivot into something quite different.
I'm doing this really sad thing where every year since 2015,
Yes.
I've done a 10-year on watch of the previous, of the 10, of the, like 2015, I did the first series. And I watched it every weekend on the actual anniversary. I'm so sad. So I'm in the middle of doing the Capaldi season that the
Yes.
Zygon story's in, so I haven't reached it yet. And I did consider breaking the sort of, like Final Destination, breaking the kind of the order, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. I did watch some little bits and bobs, but I think the Zygon, they're way more terrifying in the modern era with the teeth and stuff like that. They do have it come across. You're right, they're much more sympathetic view. What I remember mainly from the first episode of that story, I think it was the first episode, was how wasted Rebecca Front was as a guest artist. I think it was for such a talent. It was like dressing your auntie up in a Halloween soldier's costume and sending it out there with a gun.
It's
It
a
just
very
wasn't-
odd role to put her in, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't
about
seem
that.
to work for me. But obviously the big moment in that is the big speech that Capaldi gives. It's just fantastic. But you're right, this whole idea that they can live together and that there's room for everyone and that we should be welcoming as a species. If we want to go out into space, it's reciprocated. And of course, it plays into the whole concept of immigration that we're looking at right now in a bigger way. How we treat people that are alien. It's a really interesting story, and I like that one. It was a good one.
It's interesting that you mentioned Rebecca Front's character because I don't remember where I read this, but I think it was originally meant to be Bambera from Battlefield, that character, and then it was originally changed later on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I like that.
it might have been
That'd
during
be
one of
cool.
the lockdown like tweet-alongs
Yeah.
maybe.
Oh yeah.
But I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
because
I
they
remember
did that story, didn't they, as
he did.
a
Yeah,
tweet along? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And it has been novelized as well. No target of it, which I did read,
Yeah.
just both parts as one when it came out. I don't remember there being loads of extra stuff kind of put back in. I remember reading way back when there was it's going to be something to do with Courtney Woods or something. I think being part of it, and I think perhaps and other kind of links to like Peter Hunter's other Doctor Who stuff. I think maybe some of that was kind of put back in there, but I don't remember a great deal about that. I think generally it was kind of a more ambitious story in the earlier drafts, and then they kind of had to tone it down a little bit. But it's still obviously got your overseas shooting out there and everything, and all the different countries and this kind of global feel to it, which is nice.
yeah,
And the kind of how the Zygons use the shape shifting thing as a kind of a gaslighting or a way to manipulate people. They do that thing with the soldiers where they replicate their loved ones, and
I think
it's quite
that's
quite
very
a
good theme.
Quite dark,
horrible
isn't it?
scene, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, yeah, it's kind of really playing on the Zygon aspect. I suppose the only thing that you do lose really is the individuality of the Zygons, because when they're in the other forms, they're like you've got Clara as Bonnie, or they have those personalities, but when they're in the Zygon forms, they've kind of lost that individuality, I suppose. Which I guess we got with the new series Silurians, which were the sort of the masks kind of adapted to whoever was playing them. But for the Zygons, I guess they just went for a more one size fits all kind of costume. And I guess did Nick Briggs do the voice for them, or was it someone else? Can't remember. That might be the Ice Warriors. I'm thinking
Possibly, yeah.
I think they were probably done by the actors. They didn't
Right.
seem them.
Okay.
And they sound a lot different to Terror of the Zygons. I'll be honest, quite a lot of the time I had to rewind and listen to what Frozen was saying because he's talking like yeah. That was Tom Baker's face in part one when he mesmerizes Sarah Jane. That should have been in the Capaldi story. That's what
Yeah. Capaldi would have been great doing that. I could imagine him doing that. I'm going to survive without oxygen for 5 minutes.
Why didn't he do that in Deep Breath as well? Yeah.
Oh, oxygen as well.
Yeah.
Prime
There you
situation. Calm
Yeah.
down, Nadal. I have a trick for this.
One of my main takeaways from this is I always thought it was pretty silly how the resolution to the Zygon inversion with Kate, where she shoots the Zygon and you don't see it. But now, having seen Terra Zygons, I completely get it because they take ages to change form. They just stand there and they take about 10 seconds to fully merge. So I completely understand it, and I take back all of my criticisms of that moment. It's completely within character for them.
In fact, that reminds me as well, isn't there a moment where she's there with the Zygons? Isn't there like a one-shot moment where they pan across to her, and then
That was really good. Yeah.
the transformation that's all achieved in camera, isn't it? Like the actor steps out, whatever, and then the Zygon comes in, or whatever it is. I've not seen it recently, so I can't quite remember, but something like that. There are
really-
moments in there
yeah.
of horror and stuff, aren't there? It's,
They did a lot of that kind of stuff in the classic series where
Yeah.
they're just obviously trying to save on
Real
money.
school.
So you'd have a camera panning in a forest and hear the TARDIS landing
Yeah.
sound. And then it would get there and it's landed. So they thought, hey, we can't be bothered doing that. We can't afford it. Let's just use a sound effect to fake it. But actually, sometimes it works really well. It's quite effective because it's different.
I think one thing with the Zygons that they perhaps have missed a trick on, I'm surprised that they haven't done this, is, as you say, like the paranoia is something that I think is very crucial to it. And what I think sticks out
Yeah.
to me, especially with like shapeshifters, is who can you trust? How do you know that they're not a Zygon? And you have things like Blink where you have that. I love the ending of Blink where it goes across like different statues and they're still out there. And I think they've missed a trick in that. Why don't you end a Doctor Who story with the Zygon saying, well, how do you know that they're not
We're
still
not
a
out there already. Yeah,
You know, it's
We're
that
in your
thing of like
home.
I rewatched Last Christmas, And it's like, well, how do you know they're still not dreaming? Because something like that you
Yeah,
can never be certain of. And I think that's what's scary about it. And
Yeah.
especially now in the modern era, where, like I said, in the classic series, you could kind of tell because they were acting a little bit strange that they were not who they said they were. But now in the modern iteration, they so seamlessly adapt themselves, you cannot tell. And I think that's
yeah.
something perhaps they could capitalize on in that, they are so good at replicating other people. How do you know that the person next door isn't actually a Zygon? I think that's something that is a scary notion that perhaps they could play with if they come back. It's
I think
how do you
it's
know people aren't Zygons?
I've just realised it kind of does riff on a real since we talked about Halloween, a really terrifying movie from the 70s, which was a remake of an earlier science fiction film, Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald
Mm,
Sutherland. And I just remembered that watching that when I was younger, to be absolutely terrified when they do that thing. They point at the
I was going
people.
to say, like a Tom
Yeah,
Baker expression, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. And that whole that they're living among us and we don't
Mm.
know is yeah, a great concept. And yeah, they should pick up on that. I'm sure we'll see the Zygons back. I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting one because I was kind
Well,
of
if
thinking
we see
actually.
Doctor Who back,
I was kind of thinking the way they left it. I mean, technically there are still all these Zygons on Earth, aren't there? I think there's like a reference
yeah,
to it in Face the Raven with Trap Street, but not kind of and in Class as well. I think there's a reference to Zygons still being on Earth, but there's not a reference for any reference beyond that I can remember. And so I wonder whether that does that restrict where we can go going forward? Are they now just integrated on Earth? Is that it? Is that all the Zygons kind of taken care of, or can they invent some kind of loophole where there's these other Zygons, this splinter group somewhere who've come off from elsewhere, off world, and are coming to invade or cause trouble? I
There's a
suppose
lot
they
of
could do that if
stories
they
to be
wanted
told.
Yeah.
I almost think there's more that you could do with the Zygons than the Silurians. I always think that there's great stories you could tell about the Silurians that haven't been told, but I think there's probably more with the Zygons because there's a lot of different angles you can take from both the kind of the refugee sort of political angle and also the shape changing angle as well, and the horror aspects. There's a lot of different elements to the Zygons. So I hope we see them back in some form, whenever that may be. Maybe we'll get a spin-off, the war between the
humans
Blobby
and
and
Zygons or something. Yeah, well, yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Blobby comes back.
It's a
Take
Zygon.
over.
Yes.
do you think that there's been enough of a resurgence now that given that we're talking about top trumps, where would we put the Zygons in the kind of top monsters? So obviously you've got Daleks first, then Cybermen, probably Sontarans, Ice Warriors. Do you think the Zygons would come next, or would that be, I don't know?
I think the Silurians might just pip them
Yeah,
slightly just because of the amount, and you've got the Sea Devils and Silurians in one.
yeah.
But they'd be pretty close.
They've been that
I
kind of
don't know. I feel
somewhere,
like the
wouldn't they? Yeah.
Zygons are more recognizable.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because there's so many
I,
iterations of Sea Devils and Silurians,
Yeah.
whereas the Zygons, it's like this is the look. Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
back in, I think it must have been when the first season of Capaldi came out. They did a Minecraft skin pack for Doctor Who.
Oh,
Um, and so they had like skins for like the doctors and all the companions, and then they had like a load of monsters, and they had like the Daleks and stuff, and then had a Zygon one. And I remember like being in school, and like people would recognize a Zygon on Minecraft, which I don't
Wow.
know if they
wow.
would necessarily. I know this is very like abstract data I'm pulling to back this up, but I think that Zygons are more easily recognizable to a casual viewer than a Silurian,
Interesting.
especially since the Silurians have changed very
Yeah.
Yeah, the
radically.
new series ones are totally different from
Yeah.
your 70s ones, So it's in terms of a silhouette, Ice Warriors and Zygons are kind of the ones that have not really changed at all.
Yeah.
I guess to kind of bookend my comment I made right at the start about the Zygons not coming back, I think we've got to remember that the last 20 years, Doctor Who's been run by fans, whereas in the classic series it wasn't. So someone would come in just not know that what the Zygons were, and unless Graham Williams and John Nathan Turner, I knew John Nathan Turner had been working on the show anyway, but unless they had been following Doctor Who and watching it, and they were fans, which we know they pretty much weren't. then they would just wouldn't know, and they're not going to get an actor coming in and saying, "Well, I remember the Zygons, let's bring them back," in the way that David Tennant would, Peter Davison or Colin or people like that. So yeah, I think that could be the key to why these monsters didn't return. The costumes were probably folded away in a cupboard somewhere, and that was it. No one just thought about it.
Yeah.
And I
And they
guess every
obviously
producer
came
wants
back.
to put their own mark on it. Every
Yeah,
producer wants to feel.
and when they do come back, it's for the 50th anniversary. It's not just for
Yeah,
like a one-off episode. It's like the big special in the cinemas.
yeah,
It's like let's bring the
yeah,
Zygons back. They
yeah.
were
I was
obviously
going
a
to
big
say
thing
that
to
perhaps
fans.
plays into Josh's theory or whatever as well, because they were seen by all these millions of viewers in 96 different countries or whatever it was. So I guess actually, yeah, it kind of continues that tradition of the Zygons being
Do you think the
exposed to
Zygons
all
are
of
more
these,
are
all
more
these
well known
viewers.
than like the Daleks
I mean, by
in
this
certain
point,
territories?
yeah, it's kind of. And I suppose that's what allowed them to do that sequel as well in Series 9, partially,
Yeah.
because they'd been in that big anniversary story. Like, okay, well, I guess it was 2 years ago. I guess people kind of remember that as well. A similar time of year as well. I meant to say at the start with the whole Halloween theme as well. Like they're such a perfect Halloween monster because all their stories have been broadcast like in October and November, I think, basically September.
Okay.
Or tail end of August with part 1, I think, of Terror of Zygons. But yeah, and I think the first part of the two-parter was actually on Halloween, and then the following week was the second part, and obviously the 5th anniversary, all in November as well. So all kind of in that autumnal period, and they just suit this time of year, I think, like with the orange, with pumpkins and leaves from trees and stuff. It's very of this time. Yeah.
I think on the subject of like bringing them back, though, to be fair, I kind of like if it is a one-off story that is really good, to just kind of, unless you have a really good idea for a follow-up story, just let it be. Like I really love The Waters of Mars. I think that's a fantastic story, and I think that the Flood are genuinely one of the scariest monsters in Doctor Who history. But I wouldn't want them to come back unless there was a really good reason for them to come back, because I want it to be as good as the original story that made me like them in the first place.
It's the
So
problem, yeah. It is the problem with recurring monsters, and I think that you mentioned earlier Revelation of the Daleks. That I think that's why it's one of my favorite Dalek stories, because they did something genuinely interesting with the Daleks, and how many times they've brought them back just for the sake of bringing them back. And yeah, sure, you get excited, and you always love seeing them because they're amazing. But afterwards, you kind of think, well, was that really worth it, or what did they really bring, or what did they add to the evolution of the characters and or the species? And yeah, you're right. Unless you got a really good idea to do something, then don't bother doing it. That's where you end up with things like Closing Time, where it's just kind of like, well, what was the point in that? And then it dilutes the actual brilliance of the monsters that you've got, because you've not done something good with them.
Yeah.
and they have built on it and added to
Yeah, and with the Zygons they have,
mythos
yeah.
with every appearance, which is what's great about it, I think.
One of the things I meant to say as well, like that second story in particular of the new series, the two-parter, it felt very. I mean, it's still very current, I suppose, today with the allegory and stuff it brings up politically and whatever, and the whole migration thing and refugees, whatever. But it felt particularly of that time. I think at the time, with all the stuff like with ISIS and terrorist attacks, and they kind of play into that angle. Again, one of those kind of slightly daring things they do, I suppose, and it's a period of the show as well where they kind of push the limits and the boundaries of things, where they have like that bit where there's the Zygons kind of doing a broadcast in the style of that kind of stuff, which at the time, kind of, with all that similar stuff going on in the world, kind of felt very, quite scary almost, or current, and quite, oh gosh, and with the
In particular, the scene
insignias
where
and
they
things that
captured
plaster everywhere, and
Osgood,
yeah,
and they're
that's the one I'm
making
thinking
The two-
of. Yeah,
The two standing
where they're
either
either side.
side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember at the time that was the imagery that, like you say, like
That stuck
it
out,
was
didn't it?
within the culture.
I seem
at
to
the
remember
time.
as well, because I think, like I say, that second part was broadcast in the first or second week of November, and obviously quite close to Remembrance Day, so the Doctor's speech kind of struck a chord there. And I think as well there'd been some sort of terrorist attack or something that had happened maybe a few days before or that week, and so again there was a lot of resonance there, and people
there was one
the speech.
because I remember it. There was one
Was it a
the week
nightclub?
after. It was directly the night before Sleep No More. or it might have been in the middle
Okay, so
of.
just slightly afterwards.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
remember that. That was in Paris. Um,
Oh, right.
yeah,
Yes,
Yes,
that's right.
Was,
Yeah, it was Paris. Yeah, yeah.
yes.
wasn't there issue with the fact that the plane that the doctor's in explodes, and hadn't there been something similar that had happened around that time, which did it almost get cut, or am I thinking of a different Capaldi thing?
I think that's
The
Oh,
whole
in
could
cup
Moving
be.
thing.
Sherwood, maybe
Maybe.
with the
Is that an,
beheading.
There could have
oh
been.
yeah, there is
There
that.
definitely
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
there was something with like a missing plane or
But I
something.
just
It rings a vague
Oh,
bell. Maybe
okay.
yeah,
there
or
was.
or,
Well, I
or
don't
there
know.
might have been a
Maybe.
complaint about it kind
Yeah.
of sort of hitting,
Right.
touching a nerve with
Oh,
thing.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
obviously,
Now you
like
say it, maybe.
it was
Yeah.
very the Capaldi era had a lot of those things that just coincided, with the sort of horrible events that
Yeah.
happened in the world.
And I think reflecting on it now, because yeah, it's very strong imagery and very important for that time because it was very relevant for what was happening in like the immediate time it was broadcast. Um, Doctor Who was aired quite late around that time, if I remember. It was sort of
Yeah,
on around sort of 8 o'clock. So
yeah.
maybe that's partly why, because of how close to home it was hitting. Maybe they thought it
Yeah,
should
I
come a
think
little bit
it
later.
was even as the series went on, it got later and later because they aired it after Strictly Come Dancing. So as Strictly Come Dancing got shorter as contestants go out, they would put Doctor Who on after it. It actually filled the casualty slot for a while, which is kind of bizarre. It was like usually casualties about 8 o'clock, but you're right, it was getting towards 7:45. It was
Yeah.
the latest Doctor Who's ever been on. Which kind of I can't say I'm not a particular fan of. I think Doctor Who should always be viewed through the lens of children and teenagers. And yes, we can all watch it and families can watch it, but that's your conduit towards it. And when you start drifting away from that, but I think that was just Moffat desperately wanted to write adult Doctor Who. I think that was what he was wanted to do. That was his shtick. And I get it. I get, you want to do a take on it that's different. But for me, I think that you've always got to think about kids. You've got to think that it's got to be fun for the kids, because you were all young,
Yeah.
very,
That's how
we
we
were
all got
kids,
into it.
but
Yeah, exactly.
I remember at the time as well, with all of the parallels to ISIS, there being complaints that it was too mature and too adult. So I wonder, like, what are your guys' opinions? Do you think that that's something that Doctor Who should not really go there? That's something more suited for like a Torchwood, and
no.
Doctor Who should be
Doc,
more
Doctor Who
family
always had
friendly.
always had a philosophical and a political angle to it. The Pertwee's era is littered with
Yeah.
Yeah,
incompetent, inefficient politicians, and plays into that idea of how politicians and also the military thing of just blow it up instead of talking to it first. I always had that, and then you've got the great philosophical speeches of "Do I have the right?" The famous one from Genesis of the Daleks and stuff like that. I think Doctor Who always played around with that, and as a kid growing up, that gave me such a platform to go and read other things and be interested in other things, and that was where I got my a lot of sources of sort of I suppose knowledge from. It's like
Mm.
Toby Haydock talks about this in his one of his shows. He talks about Doctor Who teaching him new language and new words like Armageddon, and
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
Draconian.
playing on Doctor Who giving him so much information as a child. So I think it always has had that. But I think, yeah, you're right. There's a very thin line between taking it into a very adult level of doing it and discussion.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think with that two-parter, like it like I said, it felt very kind of close to the bone almost. But like you do want the show to be tapping into those insecurities and things, like we were saying earlier about you still want it to kind of scare you or to affect you. And I suppose we were a bit older at the time than we had been first watching the show, so like you kind of it's hard to find stuff that does affect you like that, like the thing with the bile coming out of Kate's mouth in Day of the Doctor. It's finding those moments. And I suppose tapping into those insecurities, it did achieve that, but it felt maybe kind of close to that threshold where maybe it would perhaps have become a little bit I don't know,
Yeah.
distasteful or just or strange to go any further with it. Perhaps I don't know, but obviously the philosophical element.
Yeah.
You want that in there, and the Doctor, saying how horrendous war is and all that. You want that part of it in there for sure,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
It's not a bad message to have in there, is it? Yeah, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, not controversial, not kind of no.
In terms of skate, I think it's the difference between a Cyberman standing at the top of your stairs and then going into real sort of deep political kind of discourse. you kind of got there should be that idea of the monster in the cupboard, who's lurking around the house, being scared of the dark. But when you start going into also, let's be honest, a lot of kids find that kind of stuff boring as well. They don't want things to become too political and too serious because
that's true.
It's escapism. They want to escape.
Yeah.
And some of the imagery, like that
which is
stuff
like-
about the broadcast, that would kind of go over their heads, wouldn't it? Like of young viewers, it wouldn't affect them perhaps in the same way. So
Yeah.
if they're not aware of the current affairs and stuff, so
Does the Loch Ness monster exist? There you go.
Does it
That's
exist?
a very good final question.
Comment below.
Does it?
Comment
Yeah,
below.
I think as a kid, I always wanted that to be a thing. It was always one of those myths that I believed as a kid. So I think it would be great if the Zygons were still controlling Nessie over up there. Yeah.
Josh, yes or no?
Exciting.
Loch Ness monster.
Sure. I'm open. I'm open to anything. I'll be honest, I never really was obsessed with anything like that as a child. I didn't look into like the Loch Ness monster or any of those kind of legends and myths. I was
Well,
more
you've
into
watched
sort
Terror of
of
the Zygons now, so the
there you
floodgates
go.
are
So it
open.
has to be.
planted
because
the seed.
Terror of the Zygons is a documentary. But no, I was always into paranormal stuff. But sure, has Doctor ever done Bigfoot before?
No.
The abominable
Just the
snowman,
Yetis,
isn't
I
that?
suppose, but
Yeah,
if
but
that counts.
maybe
on
the
then. Get
Zygons
writing.
are behind that as well.
So, any final thoughts to wrap up on the Zygons at all? Or have we covered
Yes,
it?
I think that Miles is a Zygon.
I mean, I was going to ask, but
I just feel
I
I
had my
tell.
suspicions.
Do you remember
I had my
the
suspicions.
50th anniversary screening where Matt Smith did that thing where if you put the 3D glasses on and you close one eye and the other lens turns black, it's a Zygon detector.
Oh, is that part of
and
one of the
next to you-
introductions they showed in cinemas? And
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Probably have
Did
seen
you
it at
guys
some
see?
point, but not.
Did you guys see the Day of the Doctor? in
Sadly
the cinema?
not. I didn't even see it live.
I seem to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never
I didn't.
saw it.
I was a
actually-
13-year-old who was like, I'm going to watch Doctor Who in the way it was intended at home on the sofa. And I'm like, what were you doing? Go and see it in the cinema.
Well, we
3D
saw
Zygons.
Empire of Death and the Reality War in the cinema, so
We did.
We did.
there you
we
go.
did.
And no
But they're
Zygons
online,
in
those
them
kids, if you wanna
unless...
watch them, 'cause-
yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, unless any of the humans in those stories were in fact Zygons. Like with the whole Osgood thing, like if she ever reappears
exactly,
now, is it
yeah.
the Zygon, is it a human?
That's a good
But yeah.
message to leave our viewers with.
Are we
keep an eye
Zygons?
out,
Are you
'cause
Zygons?
A Zygon maybe nearby you.
You might be a Zygon and you don't even
You
know
might
it.
be a Zygon, you don't even know it. Yeah. When being you
And
isn't,
being you just isn't enough.
enough, you could be a Zygon.
We didn't even
there we
go
go.
there, did we? But none of us have seen it anyway. So there we go.
yeah, well, let's
what
end the conversation
needed
before we do.
Pete.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was going to say if we had Pete with us, he could enlighten us there. But alas, that'll have to
could be
wait.
Some kind of
Pete-
Wait for
Pete
some other
seen it?
time. I
In
believe so.
post-production,
I
we
think he
should
said he
come-
had. Yeah. Prior to
post-production-
this, I
Just
I'm saying in post-production, you could turn Tom into a Zygon behind my back just before we cut off.
Yes, it just starts to morph. Yeah,
some visual
that'd be good.
effects. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh well, it's been great fun.
Yeah.
Great.
It's been great fun.
Talking
It's been
Zygons around Halloween. Thank you everybody for joining me, Charlie, Miles, and Josh. And I'm sure we'll be back on the round table at some point in the near future to discuss.
I'm
something
sure
else.
we will.
Who knows what?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Good to be back.
Awesome. Bye bye.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Oh!
Ah!